Welcome to another episode of Grief Talk, everything you want to know about grief and more. I'm your host, Vaughn Solis. As an author, life transformation coach, online instructor, and bereaved mom since 2005, I'll be bringing you great content that is informative, inspiring, and practical. Whether you have suffered a loss or other adversity, stay tuned and tapped in as I cover a variety of topics to help you get where you want to go on your journey to heal and grow. Today's guest is Anne Round. Anne is a retired physiotherapist and author of the book Essences of Truth, Inspirations from Loving Life, a collection of 29 essays that can open us up to new ways of thinking about life, light, and love. Anne is dedicated to maintaining a healthy body, mind, and spirit, and bringing love wherever she shows up. Learn how you too can bring more light and love into your life for balanced, harmonious living. Welcome to the show, Anne. I have been so excited to speak with you. We have a lot to cover today, audience. As per the introduction, Anne was a former physiotherapist, and she is a light being. She does share messages of love for the world, for personal healing, for world healing, and it is that we're going to be focusing on in this episode today. And I just want to start by welcoming you to the show. I'm so grateful you're here.
Thank you, Vaughn. It's a pleasure to be here on your show, Grief Talk. And I look forward to our conversation that we're going to excitedly pursue.
Exactly. So I want to start out, and I do have some questions for you, but I do want to start out by saying that I recently got a copy of your book. It's called Essences of Truth, Inspirations for Loving Life. And it was like, for me, and I say this absolutely truthfully, visiting an old friend. I got to page 1 and I opened it up and I went, oh my gosh, here's an old friend. And what that means is I haven't read a book of this content and substance for a while. And the minute you read it, I can tell that you are a wonderfully spiritually gifted healer, and your words are very, very impacting, and I don't say that lightly. So I learned some stuff. I got through part 1, and I was like, I had to take notes. It was that impacting for me because I learned some stuff. And one of the things I think that's so important to acknowledge is no matter what age we reach, we're always learning. Even if we're teachers ourselves, healers ourselves, we're always learning. That's why I'm excited, because I'm actually speaking today with someone who's taught me something. And it's this I want to talk with you about to help the audience think about some things in a different way, as you have guided me to do. So before I get to the first question, I wanted to just tease the audience and you a little bit with what I was so excited about in part 1, and that will be loving the self, the fear we have of love, the dualistic dimension that we live in, and my favorite, DNA, and Anne will expand on the questions I have about DNA, and of course, personal power. We may touch a little bit on control. What I'm referring to here is wanting it to the point that all the colors in the crayon box disappear. So before we get to any of that, I would love to ask you to just delve into your background a little bit, specifically how you are sharing your work in the world today. And then we'll move on to some other of these questions. So over to you.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm delighted that you're enjoying the book. It gives me great pleasure to know that it's making somebody think and learning something, because I think being lifelong learners is such a valuable to have the curiosity. That is why we're here on this planet, to experience things. And curiosity allows us to experience lots of new things. So thank you. What I do now is I actually spend a lot of time supporting people, and I do podcasts, and I have my book out in the world, and I spend a lot of time in reflection and contemplation. So I tend to lead a pretty contemplative life. The book, I talk about loving yourself a lot and things like that. And my beliefs now are even expanding to how love and source and the energies of the world circulate within us and then move out in the world. And it's really not totally our business what love is doing in the world. And that's sort of letting go of that control piece, is allowing love to move through me. So I'm a conduit of love at this point, is how I would sort of sum up what I do. And I came to it starting out with meditation 25 odd years ago, when I had young children. I had a husband who was away a lot. I had an elderly father, and I was just feeling a lot of pressure from a lot of directions. And I went into meditation, and then I went into learning how to do shamanic journeying. And at every step, I was enticed by the world of energy and what's happening in our body. As a physiotherapist, I've always been interested in health and wellness. And so I've just pursued that. And that's how I work in the world now.
How do you describe energy so that the audience would understand it?
Beautiful question. Well, firstly, everything is energy. Everything is composed of energy moving. And even though we see a table in front of us, it is actually molecules and atoms in motion. And in that motion, that's the energetic of life in that. So we as humans are made up of all sorts of cells, trillions of cells. Within those cells, we have DNA, and those are made up of proteins, and they are then again can be broken down into smaller and smaller particles. I mean, we even call them quirks and quarks at some level of physics. So everything is in motion. And energy is something that's always in motion. So it's a continual flow that is occurring in our world. Of course, in our world, we'll have some people come along and say to us, oh, that person's a very high energy person. Somebody else is a lower energy person. Things like that. Those are judgments on people's personalities and constitutions. But we are all energy. We are all having motion occurring within us.
Years ago, that's when I started to shift my understanding and awareness of energy as molecules, and every single thing, even those inanimate objects, are moving cells. It's moving energy. And I think the discussion then was something around, if you looked at it long enough, the thing could change. Bending spoons, like years and years and years ago, I bent a spoon. I did a 3-day, weekend. And one of the first things we did, and this was when I was in my mid-20s, we bent spoons. And the process took about maybe 30 minutes. And it was just feeling the spoon change in however long it took you. It took me about 30 minutes, and warm up. And then, listen, it just, and people were making shapes with it. You could twist it. You could do anything with the spoon. And so the reason I'm asking this, and I'm starting this because we're going to be getting into some questions. We're thinking of the body as energy and vibration is going to be very important. On the simplest level, what could a person do to think of themselves as energy?
One thing that comes firstly into my mind is to realize that energy is everywhere. So when our radio receives a signal and then transmits it out into our living room, then that is energy. That is energy in motion. It's sound energy. It's been transmitted. And we live in a bath of energies at all time, similar to a fish living in the ocean. The fish doesn't really know it's in water, and we don't really know that on a day-to-day, minute-by-minute basis that we're in this bath of energy. But it is a bath of energy. So that's one thing to just sort of think about, that it really is everywhere around us.
I love the bath of energy because I could visualize that. Just think about it in terms of, like chords, or however one associates, energy, I guess, which I guess for a lot of people would be electrical, right? Would you say?
Often, another way to think of energy is what is the atmosphere doing? So we have days where we feel a little more pressure when it's very, very cloudy and things like that. And we have days where it's bright and blue and sunny. And then we don't feel as much pressure on ourselves. Those are ways we feel energy. And if anybody who's been somewhere where a thunderstorm will develop, you can feel that in the air. You can just, that thunderstorm is coming because you can actually feel it in the air. So if you see a thundercloud in the distance or whatever, you can just take a moment to become aware of how much can you feel that. And people feel energy in different ways. Some are very cognoscent, so they really feel energy. Other people are clairaudient, so they hear energy. Other people are visual and see the energy. So there's all these ways that we actually see, hear, feel, and claricognizant, which is just, you just know what is happening. So those are some forms of energy. On a simple basis for people, one of the ways I first was told is if you just take your hands and bring your hands, I'm holding my hands up right now, if you're not on visual. And if you bring your hands really close together, you can feel that there's something in there.
Yes.
You move them apart, it changes a little bit.
It does.
You can play with this sort of accordion type of your hands going back and forth. And some people, I don't, but some people will see a little line of energy maybe going across their hands. So that's one way that people can start to play with energy, a really sort of specific level. And then you begin to feel it. And once you pay attention to anything, then you become more aware of it. And that's certainly how I learned and everything, is that paying more attention. And then with clients and things, I would, you'd feel that there was something going on, and I'm very claircognizant, and I would just, in putting my hands on their bodies, I would be given more information about what was happening in their bodies.
Yeah. So why this is important to our conversation audience is because I believe, and these are just my words, and Anne, I think you agree, obviously reading your book, I know you do. So we're all energy beings, and I believe that we return to an energy form when we transcend, and that we are ongoing consciousness, whether it's light, whether it's an energetic being. I don't know what it is in the afterlife, but I've certainly had enough proof from my daughter and others that just because the physical body is gone, we're not. And so let's just call it energy today. This is why you can have a lot of electrical, not that we're talking about this today, but a lot of electrical interruptions when someone initially passes. They're playing around. It's one of the easiest ways that they can play around with letting us know. And as a little aside, this is just a little story, but at Christmas, my son, who's 30, likes to tell me he doesn't really believe in this stuff, okay? And there were 4 of us sitting at the dinner table, and I think it was on Christmas Eve. And as you do, you remember your loved one's gone. And of course, I was thinking about my daughter. She passed away in 2005, for folks that don't know this, at age 22, and it was suicide. So it's been a difficult journey for me. And it's forced me to question a lot of the things we're even talking about today, and rethink them and expand on them. But anyway, so right in the moment, the perfect moment, the ceiling fan light went on. And so my niece and I looked at each other, my husband, who is a believer, okay, yeah, it could be anybody. But anyway, that's not the story. The story is because my son kept saying, oh, I think he was joking, but it's Wi-Fi. They're all connected to Wi-Fi. Yeah, right. Well, it went on a total of 3 times over Christmas. And that, I choose to believe, was a little nod from my daughter saying, hey, I got you. I see you. I'm not with you physically, but I'm there in spirit. And the light is one way. That was a demonstration. When my husband's brother died about 3 years ago, a day after that he died, our whole electrical system went out of the car. Took it in for servicing, couldn't find a thing. Nothing worked. It was going crazy with the electrical systems malfunctioning. So we just assumed it was his brother and gotcha. But could you please not do anything to the car? Anyway, but getting back to us as energy, one of the reasons I wanted to talk a little bit about that and going into these questions from part 1 of your book is to help people understand that when they embrace new ideas, new thought to expand their consciousness and just want more, that, we don't have to just be these heavy corporeal physical bodies that can weigh us down in just so many ways. I wanted to start with loving the self. And your messages on each of these points in your part 1 of your book, Anne, are so poignant. It's like I wanted to talk about them because these are issues that I think that people struggle with. And so my little note I had to myself is that, number 1, in talking about this, you're talking about, people need self-care. We really, really need self-care, and loving the self is one of the most important things we can do. But I think a lot of people are afraid of love, and I don't think they know how to take care of themselves. I almost think it's the number 1 job that we have. So I just wanted to know if you could speak a little bit, if you agree that people really don't know how to take care of themselves, and what's 1 or 2 things they could do to just start to be aware that it's important. And yes, I do deserve to take care of myself.
People will often think that taking care of yourself is being selfish. This is not true, because the truth of the matter is that if we don't take care of ourselves, we can't take care of anybody else. And that's what I learned also as a physio, was that unless I took care of myself, I couldn't show up for my clients. And so I had to make sure I had enough sleep, that I had time outside, that I had exercise, that I had time to relax, things like that. All those things I had to fit in while raising 3 children also. So I get that our lives can be so hectic, but you just have to grab whatever little times you can. For me, certainly in that time, now I have the luxury of time, and I can luxuriate in taking time to meditate for an hour and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, what I would do is I would wake up 5 or 10 minutes early, and I would just lie on my back, and I would do some deep breathing, and I would just gather myself. And it was like, it's a little meditation, but it's gathering. And in that time, you can say your prayers if you have somebody you're concerned about, or if you've woken up out of a dream, just to settle before you start the day. And then I would ride my bike, a 5-minute bike ride to work. And during that time, I'd be saying my prayers on the bike. And so it was always, for me, in those very busy times, slotting it in. And it might be as little as saying thank you to the universe when you didn't hit a red light. You go, hey, thanks. So for the self-care for people themselves, it may be, climbing into a hot bath once a week. Mm-hmm. And putting on some nice music you like, and a candle, and really letting yourself sink into the pleasure of a hot bath. And if that isn't your pleasure, then you need that. Your pleasure may be taking that time and going for a run. And if that's your pleasure, well, then sink into it while you're out running. Feel your feet on the earth. Feel the trees that are around you. Look at the flowers. Take it in. So, I heard this a day or two ago, and it was talking about spirituality really interacting with the natural world. I thought, oh, that's so good, because that's what it is, being part of your own life, not being a robot in your life, caring for yourself, looking at yourself in the mirror in the morning and going, I love you, or yes. Hi, have a good day.
Yes.
Oh, even that is a positive expression towards your being that is in the mirror, that you're addressing in the mirror.
Yes.
There's lots of little ways of doing it. I mention a lot of these little ways because I think people's time is so compacted in our lives these days. And everybody thinks, oh, I don't have time. But those small motions of self-care, your body, your mind, your heart will open to them. And then you'll find yourself giving yourself more. And that leads to loving yourself.
I remember, and I'm speaking about this very quickly for audience members. So when I lost my daughter, obviously there was a lot of guilt and regret I felt, and no self-worth and all that kind of stuff. And this went on for quite a while. But I'm going right back to the beginning months. I wouldn't say days or weeks, but months when I could look at myself in the mirror. And today you wouldn't know I was the same person. But I would challenge anybody, if they're coming from any sort of feeling of undeservingness, just not even being aware of loving themselves. So let's just leave it at that. And to when you're looking in the mirror and maybe you're putting on the makeup, and for people that don't wear makeup, whatever gender, you're just looking, in the mirror, doing your hair, whatever. But really, and Anne, I'll bet you've done this, stop and really look in your eyes. Really look in your eyes and embrace every single bit of pain and joy. And sometimes they're just really intense eyes because you've come to the planet to have an incredible experience that it reflects the intensity in your eyes. The eyes are the absolute doorway to your soul. And really study and look at them. And then, as Anne says, say, I love you, but I would add your name. Because if you just sit there and go, I love you, yeah, but then you go, I really love you, Vaughn, or your name, it completely changes the interaction you're having with yourself. Would you agree, Anne?
I totally agree with that, because when you say, I love you, and you can adding your name, what I feel is that I'm speaking. When I first started, I'm actually really speaking to that reflection in the mirror, but it's immediately speaking back to me because that's what's happening. And I personally would feel this energy sort of just come into my heart and into my solar plexus area when I would do that. And so it moved it from a mental thing of just utilizing words to actually feeling the loop that I was creating with myself. Because every time I say, I love you to someone, to myself or someone else, my body hears it first. My body gets to be the first thing to respond, gets to go, oh, and I may just be saying, I love you to you, Vaughn, but my body doesn't know that. My body only hears in every little cell of my body that's always listening and is always receiving, it hears, I love you. And there is just a relaxation and an opening within every cell of your being when you do that.
So it's really worth doing it for yourself on a regular basis. Now, I just want to touch very quickly on the fear we have of love. I don't know why we're so afraid of love, receiving especially, giving maybe less so. But one thing I do have, you say in your book, our essence is light and love. That's who we are. So I wanted to just ask if you had any tip for someone who can't love themselves today. Is there one or two things they can do and this also goes with kindness, but just to be kind to themselves and to really think about embracing love for themselves?
And mostly we appear to be able to give love better than we are able to receive. Most of that is set up by our societal conditioning, far beyond just our basics. Every baby that comes into the world just exudes love.
Yes.
It all gets covered up when society and parents and friends and whatever put expectations on that. It gets all piled up. And then we forget that we are love. And that is the thing. So for someone who truly is in a paradigm where they do not feel that they deserve or can receive love, honestly, the best thing is borrow a dog or a cat from someone for a short period, because the animals are always exuding love like that newborn.
Yep.
They can't not do that because that is who they are. And in actual fact, we cannot stop love either, but we have this mental capacity and that can interfere with it. If we can hush our brain enough and our mind, we are pure love. So one of the things that I try to speak of is that the word love has all those romantic connotations, everything like that. I had to shift the word love for myself. I use an acrostic, light of vitality everywhere. So when I was first learning to love myself, I would imagine light just coming from the heavens, flowing down and over me, and that it's life force. Mm-hmm. This is the life force I am. Mm-hmm. And so this is a really different thing than expecting another human to give us the love, because another human is their own history, their own biology. They're in their own cocoon, and it's not that they can't exude love, because they do, because it is simply a light that travels into us and travels out. It is there, but then for us to receive it is just to start the opening. So I would say that somebody who's having trouble feeling like they can't receive love, you need to first imagine the angels, imagine guides, imagine whatever you need to imagine, and that it's pouring down and into every piece of you, every cell. And then when you have come to a point where you can see that, then you can find it in yourself. You realize it's all part of you. And then you can play. You can play with yourself in the mirror. You can play with that pet. Then you can play with another person, and ultimately what we want to learn is to never withhold love, so that love is forever moving through us and out into the world, and that we don't stop it because of those mind, ego concepts that are holding us back. And it doesn't mean that we're suddenly going around and hugging every person we see. There's many people that can't have that type of intimate contact, because that's intimate contact. Doesn't mean I can't stand back and just open my doors of love towards that person.
Yes.
A bit of intention that, that person's going through something tough.
Yes.
May the love that I am and they are be felt.
That's really beautiful. And I'll speak to the people who might be dealing with trauma or another type of mental health issue that forces us to, I live with PTSD. I know all about the woe boundaries. And for some reason it's in the brain and survival and all that stuff, and we don't want to embrace it too much. I think it's the trusting thing. I don't trust you enough to get you, let you into this, boundary and so on, which can be really hurtful to loved ones. But I love the idea of, I'm having this vision of just embracing. And what I want to say is we can be vessels of love, and we can express love, even if we can't feel it to the degree we want to feel it for ourselves, or physically open that up in a more intimate way. I just mean by that hugging, that sort of thing, letting them into your space. I get that it's a problem for many people, but even just start with opening yourself up, thinking, letting that energy and vibration and light and love flow into your body and let it do its magic. I wanted to touch next on the dualistic dimension that we live in. Some of us struggle, and some of us just recognize and manage the dualistic nature of this human experience. You basically say that it is a dualistic dimension that we live in, which allows us to make choices. So for the audience that may not have heard about the dualistic dimension or is aware of it intellectually, it's as you say, each of us gets to choose our way of believing life is for us. I totally love that. And so speaking about the dualistic dimension in that term, they have a choice to choose how they want life to work for them, right?
Yes. We truly do. We always have choice. That is the one thing we do have. We have free will to make choice. We have free will to change our past choices. It is the element in my mind that we have control of. So we live in a dualistic world. We live in a polarity. We live where there's left, there's right, there's up, there's down. This is the human condition. This is what becoming a human is to enter from, we were talking earlier about being energy. When we die from this life, we become energy. From that energy, we return to this life if you believe in reincarnation. And if you don't, then that's your choice. So in my world, I believe in reincarnation. So I believe we cycle out. And we're in an energy field of greater unity and greater oneness. And then we come back in. And when we come back in, people will say we're covered with veils or whatever, but we are then separated from that complete unity. And so we're in separating from that complete unity, we enter into this dimension of polarity. So to sort of move into the same conversation we've had is that we have a choice to love something or we have a choice to fear something. It's one particular polarity. And we get to choose. I often talk about our divine nature and our human nature. And what we're doing now at this point in history on planet Earth as humans is we are allowing more of our divinity to descend into our humanity. Anybody that's heard that things are shifting, stuff like that.
Yes.
This is how I look at it. But there is that polarity of the divinity being one side of something and the human being another. But they need to come together. Yes. Now, I often talk in triangles. So I'll say I'm human on one point and I'm divine on another point. And then both of them come together in the tip of the triangle. And then I'm whole.
Oh, I love that.
And so that's one way I'll think of things. And I mean, even we can do black and white. Becomes gray when we mix it together, and think of all those beautiful different shades of gray in the world. Again, it comes back to when I said earlier, we get to make a choice. I get to make a choice whether I'm going to withhold love or I'm going to allow love to flow forth. Those are two opposites because again, we are opposites. For me, find that allowing the love to flow forward makes me feel better, happier, joyful, peaceful, calm. When I withhold, I feel a resistance. And so, I make that choice. Oh, wow, that feels like there's some resistance there. I'm going to change my choice.
What I just want to add here really briefly, because we could do a whole episode on just duality and choice, and we don't have time for that. But what I just want to say to anyone watching this or listening to this, and you're stuck in a situation that you absolutely think you can't get out of, you want to, but you think you can't. And I've been there before, and you've probably been there before. When you open yourself up to all the things we've talked about to this point, that your energy and all the other things, light, love, the more you embrace that and the more you will trust yourself to allow the universe to deliver, even if you don't quite know what you want, the way will be shown to you what to do next. Take it step by step. You don't have to be stuck, and duality shows us this in many ways. Health, light, dark forces, good, bad people, in every way that you can think of. There is duality, like Anne was mentioning, and it comes to all of us, and we get to choose which, type of energy we want to mostly function from. And I say mostly because I don't always sustain within myself the true nature of how I know I am, but I can bring myself to center pretty quickly. So that's for me, the key is having the tools to be able to get to center, which leads me to DNA. So you say DNA is activated by light, and you talk about the conflict and tightening of DNA and the relaxation and loosening of DNA. And we're 75% water, and we can change the vibration. And you point to the work of Masaru Emoto. And so I went and I looked up his website. And I'll put that in the link below for people that may be interested. And they talk about and they show images of molecules changing with language. So negative language and what that water molecule looks like. And then gracious, divine type words, love, gratitude, and so on, and how the molecule shifts. And it looks to me like I looked at them and all of them had 6 points with a center. I've been playing around with putting my hand over my cup of water or my tea beverage and asking the divine and source to change those molecules to molecule anyway, it's divine. And while I can't say I'm 100%, yes, I can taste a difference. I think I can because my taste buds have been off a little bit. More importantly, and here's what I wanted to talk briefly with you about. Again, we could do a whole episode on it. It's the changing of the DNA, relaxing and loosening my DNA for balance. And I'm so excited about that because it's working. In a traumatic state, you live in anxiety, or with anxiety, I should say, and constant stress because the brain is keeping you in survival mode. So if you are living with something that's causing you anxiousness and stress, we've got to change the inner vibration. So this is where I just wanted to acknowledge, and if there's anything you wanted to add about the importance of the DNA and relaxing and loosening it within us. I'm telling you, Anne, this has been the thing that is instantly calming me. Just want to say. So if there's anything you want to add.
I do. I would like to add one. I would like to acknowledge Greg Braden's work on this because that's where I first heard about these concepts. Being a bit of a science person myself, I like to hear the science of things, and so the science is that they took just DNA out of like a saliva mucosal membrane thing, just like sending your DNA testing in to 23andMe or somewhere else. And they moved it further away from the source person and saw that the DNA reacted the same way the person reacted in a room 10 miles away. So that's one part of it. The other part was that they would have the samples of DNA in one spot. They would have the person being shown pictures of things in front of them, joyous, traumatic. And that's when they saw what the DNA did. So I think of it like a slinky. For DNA to replicate, it opens up, the RNA comes in and create new proteins to create molecules. To allow that to happen, the DNA strand needs to unwind a little bit. That's when you're going to get the best replication. Yeah. What they found is when they showed people the joyous pictures, the DNA relaxed. Therefore, it was able to receive and to create the best replication.
Yeah, I love that.
Some of these people were showing horrific pictures. The DNA contracted and then became tight and denser. And so it speaks of, density versus lightness, closure versus opening. And it depends on what we're being exposed to. And yes, we've been exposed to a traumatic situation in some nature. We can then choose to use beauty, humor, other things to help us move through these things. And so much in our society, we think, especially if it has involved a person like your daughter, you think, oh, but I can't be happy because this happened. But the very best thing we can do for the person who, for the person impacted, is that we can be happy. We do open our DNA. We do allow creation to occur in a relaxed manner. The other piece I always, in the shamanic work I do, I would end up in like a cave somewhere, and I would be wanting to do, I was in healing, doing some healing work on myself, and I'd end up in this cave on a bed of some nature, and there would be all this pink light flowing around me. And when I saw that pink light, I knew there was a level of relaxation in my entire body. That's for me. Everybody's going to have their own little indicators, but it was very important. And in my work with in physio, I was very insistent that my clients were given, we used a lot of electrotherapy at that time. I would treat the patient, and then I would have them in a hot pack, and I would have them lie for about 15 minutes. And regardless of whether the modalities were doing what they were doing, what that client needed was 15 minutes to just integrate the relaxation so their DNA could begin to heal, so their blood would increase to flow. Because if we have density, and even in the DNA it can't work, if we have density in our tissues, there's not going to be blood flow, and then they won't get better. So there's this thing about opening our mind, opening our heart, opening our possibilities. It's just about lightness and opening and allowing that when we do that, flow can occur, creation can enter us and flow into the world.
Yeah. Hence, folks, healing, expanding your consciousness, allowing yourself to become a vessel of light and love. By the way, working with angels, pink is love. Moving quickly to personal power. This was very impacting for me. And when you say that we have been conditioned to forget our own power and instead believe in another person's story of power. And I brought that up for this episode. It works. It's all tying together. I've been building a story here for the audience. So when we've reached the point that we get that we're energy, we get that we're vessels of light and love, and that all of these things, all goodness, all positive thoughts, no matter what is happening around us or in the world, impact what's going on in our body to bring it to balance through relaxation and other techniques. You question why we give in to another story of power. And whether you want to speak to that and expand on that just a little bit, I want the audience to consider, are they doing that themselves? Have they forgotten their power within? I would ask you to explain where, I know you did in the book, where your center of power is, so they can connect to it themselves. But be very, very mindful of whether or not in any situation we are giving in to another person's story of power, which quite often can be a negative experience, controlling and so on. It's something that's robbing us of our own power. It can be life itself. Do you want to speak to that a little bit, Anne?
Let me just start with where I consider our power center is our, there's other words for it.
Yes.
In this book, I use the word dantian a lot. So some people call it to your center point or one point. And it's kind of in your navel. It's sort of behind your belly button in the back there a bit. Is the concept, and that's really just to give it a location. When we breathe, we want to breathe into our own power center. So that's abdominal breathing in into our base, into our into our abdominals, allowing the abdominals to expand, and then breathing out and exhaling and letting that come from down below. Again, these are relaxation breaths. These are ways we open up. There's lots of stuff on breathing in the world. That's another topic entirely. So that is where our power kind of resides. And, and it's right in our gut. Our gut is right there. It's a very powerful area of our body. So this is where we center. And when we give our power away to someone else, that someone else essentially comes along and tells us, this is the way the world is. The sky is purple. Am I going to believe that? Where do I check in on that, right? So I'm going to take that statement, the sky is purple, and I'm going to bring it to my center. Mm-hmm. And then what I feel is I either feel a contraction or an expansion in my center. Now, when I said the sky is purple, I immediately felt my gut go, it's not. My visual field, the sky is blue. So, that's a very simple example of that. But when people come to us and say, you have to do X, Y, and Z, if we can take that piece of information into our center point, and that is where our intuition lives, we can learn to say yay or nay. In actual fact, in human design, there's some lovely things that if you're a certain type of person, you'll hear yourself go, I'm that type of person. And you'll hear yourself go, uh-huh, or uh-uh. And that is basically a yes, no response in my place of power.
I want people to think about what Anne is saying, because you do, in my opinion and experience, need to tap into this power. I love how you have given us a visual where it resides. Further to what you were saying about someone thinking about this in terms of you should do this or you have to do this or whatever, it's also all of those times somebody may have said to us, you will, you should have, you could have, you did. It's blame. It's all of these things. And, it's that old saying, but it's so true. We can hear 1,000 good things and remember the one bad. So it's essential, again, building on everything we've talked about to this point, to have it culminating in thinking about your personal power, your power, whatever you want to call it, that place that's really your strength. Okay, so Anne, I've got one last thing I want to talk about and have people think about, and this is the idea of control. To me, it goes hand in hand with power, possibly being aware at a highly innate level that you're losing it and therefore you want to control things, or you just have a part of your nature because of something that's happened and there's a huge need to control around you. Trauma, again, is like that. I don't want anything else bad happening. I can't have it. I can't deal with it. I need to control every single thing around me. And listen, I've been like that for a long time and I'm aware of it now and I can manage it. But you say so poignantly, and again, I'm going to be remembering this, when we have the need, to control, to the point that all the colors in the crayon box disappear. So why I'm bringing that up for people to think about is because that is such a good visual, to be so rigid in one's thinking or so survival-based, instinctually driven. It has to be this way. Whatever is driving the need to control, and I think we all have a little bit of that within us. I still think it comes from our reptilian brain to ensure our survival. Is there anything that you could suggest to help people even start to give up just a little bit of control? It's like to have every color crayon, keep it in that box.
So for me, in my life, there was a period where I was raising my 3 children. My husband was in the Navy and he was away a huge amount. And I had to have a fairly big control things. I was running my own clinic and I had these kids, and it was a really crazy busy. And I just, I had a level of control that meant every single day, like my husband would go away for 3 months. Well, I would have all the meal planning for 3 months done.
Wow.
And I would have food in the freezer. And I mean, this is a level of control. Now, I'm speaking, this is not having control because I'm worried about surviving and things like that. I mean, It was my survival at that time, but I realize people's situations are much more dire than this, but it's just trying to give an example.
It's important, Anne. It's important because there's lots of people today running around just like you did. So it's important.
So I had 3 months of meals all planned now, and it was all written out on the calendar, and it was actually perfect for me. Mm-hmm. Because it meant I knew what was happening for dinner every day. But there came to be the point where my husband wasn't going to see in that same capacity. And I no longer needed to control that aspect of my life to that degree. But it took a conscious choice again to change my behavior.
I have to just ask you here, though. Even when you said that the level of, what you were trying to control 3 months worth of meals might not be the same, but in a way, I kind of think it is, because what was it about that 3 months? Something was going to happen. Maybe you couldn't handle if the meal wasn't already planned and the groceries in the freezer. And then further to that, what was it that was going to happen if you couldn't handle it? Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
That's I think, what control is about for just about everybody.
Yeah. We all are trying to control to stay safe.
Yes. There you go.
Trying to stay safe and keep my 3 children safe. And one of the ways of that is that I need to eat.
Exactly.
Control is, as far as I know, it's always about safety and security.
Yes.
In the world that we find ourselves in. And sometimes it's not, doesn't feel safe and secure. And you need to control it in some way. So control is important. And it's like anything in the world. There is absolutely nothing wrong with control in the correct atmosphere, level, intention. But if there is something that is controlling you from doing something else, if you are so controlled that you won't walk out your door, now that could be controlled by someone else. Mm-hmm. That could be controlled by your fear that if I walk out the door, something's going to happen. Like, let's say that's your fear. Your fear is if I walk out that door, something's going to happen. So I'm never walking out that door. Well, so for me, we've got a problem. First piece with that problem is saying, hi, I've got a problem. I can't walk out my door. The first piece is admitting to yourself that I have a control, there's a control issue here. I'm controlling myself. I need to work with that. The second step might be opening your front door.
Yeah, I have a really good example, though, while we're talking. So the anxiety part I talked about, okay? So I order these supplements from the States 3 or 4 times a year, and they're a little bit expensive. So when I know my parcel is coming, I am quite excited to get it. There's been 3 or 4 examples where it hasn't reached me. And then I know no one's going to take responsibility for it, blah, blah, blah. And it's a nightmare. So they all got resolved, those situations. But my brain was still triggered to understand something bad can happen. Now, again, this is nothing on the level of, thinking something's going to happen to my surviving son. But I want to point this out for people who have stress and anxiety. The littlest thing can be the biggest mountain. So what I did was, and this points nicely to your second part to your response, do something about it. Something even small. I changed to flex delivery and I tried it, and I just did it for the first time and had a parcel a couple weeks ago go to the post office. It means I have to go to the post office. But I trusted enough to, number one, and here's what I want the audience to think about. Whatever your situation is, trust yourself enough to make a change in your behavior once you've acknowledged that it's impacting your life. It's interfering with your life. So control when it's interfering for your life is the kind of control we're talking about. Trust yourself enough to make a little bit of a change. And if it doesn't work out, guess what? Trust that you can find a solution for the problem and make a different choice. And years and years and years of struggling with a whole bunch of different scenarios have taught me this. So I share that story because, again, to reiterate that no amount of control, big or small, is crazy. And it is something that has to be dealt with and changed. The behavior has to be changed if it's interfering with your life, because that's what makes us sick and keeps us locked indoors and keeps us from pursuing life, essentially. Think about whether or not your crayon box is full of colors or not. And this has largely turned into something a little different than I had intended to talk to you about today, but it has been very insightful. I just wanted to ask you, as we come to the top of the hour here, whether there's anything else you wanted to offer to the audience. I am going to be putting a link to your website where they can find your book. Again, you're the author of Essences of Truth, Inspirations from Loving Life. I will attest to the fact that you have beautiful, beautiful inspirations, wonderful exercises, and overall wise messaging in your book. So I do encourage anybody to go to your website and look into getting your book. If you want some daily comfort, you can turn to any, as you call them, essays. There are 29 essays, and just be comforted in the few pages that are filled with such impacting words. So thank you for sharing your wisdom with the world in that way. So is there anything else that you would like to share as we close this episode out?
I really encourage people to trust life. There's a lot of things that are unknown and uncertain, but we just need to walk forward in life, trusting that we are love, we are loved, and we are loving. And that our pure essential nature will move forward in the world with kindness and respect, can be our very best choice for navigating any times of uncertainty. So I just encourage people to really trust. And as always, love yourself. It's the first step.
Yeah, and I'm just going to give the audience, the quote that you have, your own saying, is that each of us gets to choose our way of believing that life is for us. And that is a powerful statement. So I want you to just think about that as we close this out. And I thank you so much for being here. And it's been wonderful. And I'm sure it's going to be impacting for a lot of people.
I hope so. And thank you so much, Vaughn. It's been a wonderful conversation. And
yes,
I hope people can walk away with a few pearls of wisdom.
I think they will. So thanks again.